All right. Hello, everybody. This is Stu and David, and this is filling the Storehouse podcast, episode 9. Is that right? I always forget.
I think so.
Yeah, episode 9. And today, so it's Easter weekend, and we have two amazing guests on today, and it's perfect timing for the season and for everything that's going on right now. My friend Mike Lotzer and his business partner Matt Morgan. Welcome, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on today.
Yeah. Hey, before we kick it off, just want to highlight that we got some bald beauty going on.
All right, bald is beautiful. Come on.
Bald is beautiful. Stu, you feel left out, buddy?
I feel a little left out, but I tried to get kind of closer to you guys. If anyone has watched the YouTube videos before this episode, I did have a full head of hair, and I went with my new COVID-19 look and tried to get as close to you guys as possible. But if I went full force, I don't know if it'd be a good look for me.
Hey, so you have a choice. We don't have a choice. We actually secretly just want to be like you, but strength in numbers, right? So.
Yeah.
Hey, I think your effort's pretty weak, Stu. There's a lot left up on the top there, but I will probably not a great practice, Matt, to disagree with our guests so close to the beginning of the podcast. But I think God created only a certain number of heads that He wanted to, the full glory of looking down on a bald head. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Well, hey, let me kick it off real quick with just your bios. We knew that humble gentlemen like you guys would probably not highlight some of your accolades. So I thought we'd do that for you. So first off, Matt Morgan is one of the leading relationship coaches in the country. He's helped more than 10,000 military members, veterans, and civilians bulletproof their relationships. When it comes to equipping newlyweds, and married couples, Matt has a gift for creating millennial-friendly, data-driven, and highly practical coaching experiences. Matt holds a master's degree in counseling and theology and was recognized as both Wedding Wire's and the Knot's 2019 Best Marriage Coach. Matt resides in Denver, Colorado with his wife and daughter. And I will say I never thought I would know what Wedding Wire was and the Knot, but it left a impression on my life as I was getting married 11 years ago and spent a lot of time on the Knot. So
yes.
That's legit. Okay, and Mike Lotzer is a pastor, entrepreneur, and former Army chaplain, having served with distinction in the Iraq War. Mike has worked on the staff of several megachurches in both California and Minnesota and is presently the lead pastor of Mercy Road Church in Minneapolis. In 2019, Mike partnered with his friend Matt Morgan to launch Salute to Relationships. STR is a digital training organization that bridges the gap between the best civilian relationship training and the specific needs of military service members and veterans. Mike lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota with his wife and 3 children. Beautiful.
All right. So we kind of wanted to focus today on one, their business, Salute to Relationships. And, episode 8, we were talking about, the stuff that's going on right now with COVID-19 and us being quarantined and really what we should be focusing on and what we should be spending time with investing in people, investing in education. And so we kind of wanted to come on today to talk to Mike and Matt about investing in relationships because it's huge. And before we get into that and before we get into their story and their mission, I want to kind of give a little bit of a backstory with my connection and relationship with Mike. As everyone knows, I'm in the Navy, and in 2008, 2009, I was tagged to go on what they called an individual augmentation. And so I was rooted from my Navy aviation career and sent to Iraq to be a part of an Army Civil Affairs Battalion. And we were connected with the 10th Mountain Division at the time when I first got there, and they quickly left. And then the National Guard unit from Minnesota came in, and that's where I met Mike. Mike was an Army chaplain there in Iraq. We were in Basra, Iraq, and we got connected. And we kind of started to learn about each other, and he started a little men's group, kind of like a small group, and that I joined. And then he got the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University class funded through his unit. And so I joined that and started kind of learning about financial peace with Dave Ramsey. And then a little bit later on, Mike had the idea of starting a coffee shop, and I volunteered to help him out, and we started Holy Joe's Coffee, a tiny little coffee shop in Basra, Iraq. And it was like my sacred ground for like coming and being like, not just this Army guy, Navy guy in Army shoes, but it was a place where like Mike and I could talk and have a good relationship. And it's where I like kind of reconnected with the Lord. So Mike and I have we kind of lost touch for a while, and then he reconnected with me not so long ago. And, I felt like incredibly blessed to get reconnected with Mike. So Mike, thank you, man. I can't tell you how much you meant to me, especially during that time period. It was a tough deployment, and I know you had some pretty tough times too, which we can get into for those listeners.
Yeah, thanks. I feel the same way. And that was some coffee shop, wasn't it? It was an old engineer tent that we reclaimed, and then we sprayed the heck out of it. So it really only stood up because of the spray foam. But you could fit 100 guys in there. And we had a whole wall of coffee, and we took the hymn boards from the British Anglican chaplain before me. And we kind of made a joke out of hymns. So like, be thou my night vision, and a mighty fortress is our Cobb contingency operating base. And so it had this whole theme. And then we took the most kind of vulgar meme that it's this World War II sergeant holding a cup of coffee, and the meme, it says, how about if you have a glass of shut the up, blank up, and we scrubbed out that, and we reinserted, are you running on spiritual, how full is your spiritual cup, or something like that. So guys would walk by it and do a double take because they'd see that image, and then they were like, oh, that's like a chaplain thing. Yeah, it was a good time.
It was, man. It was awesome. Like I said, it was kind of like it was my holy place, right? To go and like, feel connected. And I'd go there every morning and have some coffee. And then I started volunteering there to, make coffee. I mean, we had great coffee too. It was way better than anything you could get in the DFAC.
Well, these lower enlisted guys would show up, and they'd see Stu, and Stu's their barista, aviator and an officer, and they'd kind of feel pretty special, do a double take. So
yeah,
it was serving heart. Yeah,
it was a good time for sure. Well, so then Mike reached out to me not too long ago and started telling me about the company that he and Matt had started with Salute to Relationships, and I got online and got a username and password and started going through it, and my wife and I started going through some of the classes together, and it was a perfect time for my wife and I. We had been kind of struggling, like we have small kids, and we're just so engaged with just daily life with our kids and having them be the focus. And we had kind of lost a little bit of focus for our relationship. And we started going through this stuff, and man, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. So, Mike and Matt, tell us about like what Salute to Relationships is, and kind of the backstory of that and the why behind it.
Yeah. Salute to Relationships is just that. We are saluting to warriors and veterans to be able to optimize and increase the most vital relationships that they have. And our why is healthy relationships are what make life rich. And for warriors, it makes freedom worth fighting for. And so at the end of the day, we all know relationships are tough. They're hard. They're not easy, but they're the most vital thing we have. And especially, in our time right now, we're all quarantined. We're at home. A lot of us are now, it's April, it's Easter weekend. We're like stir crazy. And it's like, we need this now more than ever. It's like, I love you, but I can't stand you. And that's called real life. And I think military culture has a whole host of other things like PTSD, deployment, mid-tour leave, like reintegrating back into society. So there's a whole nother realm that military culture goes through that civilians just don't understand. And so, I was a pastor in my former life, I call it. I was a relationship coach. I've been a relationship coach for many years. And Mike, he and I went to college together. And so we were college buddies. And so he's in Minneapolis. He was like, hey, you have this relationship coach stuff going on with online resource. Could I use it for my military culture? And I said, yeah, absolutely. How can I serve? Let's do that. And I never served in the military. Although 16 years ago this weekend, I was at Mike's house and he actually tried to recruit me. He's like, I'm going, you got to come with me. And so he almost sold me too. He's pretty influential, but, and so I couldn't hack it. I'm not as brave as you guys. And so he started saying, hey, could we use this? I said, absolutely. And then, a couple of years ago, I was like, does this not already exist for the military? I mean, is this something? He's like, well, it does, but there's something that's so dynamic, I think, that we have here, being able to take the best civilian coaching, connect it with Mike's military backdrop as well, and connect those two together. And such was the birth of Salute to Relationships. And so we want to be able to help increase the resiliency of warriors by optimizing the most vital relationships. And really, as a result, decrease the suicide rates that are plaguing our warriors and veterans, like 22 a day. I mean, it's so sad. So there's really a huge sense of urgency that we have to be able to get this into the hands and hearts of warriors and veterans today, because in some cases their life depends on it.
Yeah, Matt, you hit on a couple things. So first off, I think anybody who goes into pre-marriage and marriage counseling is a pretty brave dude. So don't sell yourself short on that. I'm sure you've been in a couple of situations where we would not probably, the other individuals in here outside of Mike would probably not thrive in those environments.
I might take a deployment to Iraq over being in a one-on-one scenario with a couple that aren't getting along too well.
Yeah,
100%.
scary, right? The bombs go off in that room. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's something else that really hits close to home. And I think when we initially started talking, that was really something that touched me personally. And Stu and I, with the Warriors Heart, the folks we're always talking about, their primary mission being helping those that serve to heal through through their program as well. It's very near and dear to our heart. But I didn't share this with you guys, but in the last 2 weeks we've had 2 attempts. And so we've, in my command, and then, a couple months ago, we had an actual suicide, and we have ideations is kind of just a recurring theme in our command. So it hits very close to home. And I think in the fact that you guys are doing this mission is huge. And, Stu and I are absolutely grateful to you guys for leading the way in this, because the truth of the matter is, a lot of times when the government runs a program, it's just not as good as the civilian version of it. And you guys have that special insight to be able to bridge the gap between the civilian and the military, and also have this incredible program. And I think another point that really resonates with Stu and I is the fact that you guys are Christians first, and then you're entrepreneurs. And if you don't mind just kind of talking on that a little bit, this is a little bit off script, but I think a lot of folks struggle with entrepreneurship and making money and that kind of focus, and then having that be a faith-based thing, and having it completely honor the Lord, but also be very entrenched in things of this world, being entrepreneurship. So if you guys don't mind just touching on that briefly for our listeners, because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
For sure.
I know as a lead pastor, it's definitely something I have to navigate, because the last thing I would want is for people to have the perception that I'm overly money motivated. And I'm a full-time lead pastor, and also the co-founder and partial owner of STR. So, there's something to balance. I also co-founded a nonprofit called Morning Story that helps people film a message where they preach the gospel at their own funeral in advance of their own death. So I'm just a personality that's attracted to entrepreneurial ideas, like building crazy tents in the middle of Iraq. And I think God has blessed that. And at some level, Matt has been really good for me in just reminding me that, at the end of the day, people you're always going to have people misunderstand your motives to some degree, and all you can do is be faithful to what God has called you to. I've been inspired by both of you, David and Stu, in that, we've said similar things like, money is not a bad thing. It's a neutral thing. And the more money you have to steward, the more money that you have to give and to bless other people with. So I think if you are an entrepreneur and a follower of Christ, as long as you understand that money is a terrible master, but it's a very effective tool to advance his kingdom, I think God oftentimes will really bless your efforts. And that's been the story in my life too. My wife and I have never had to worry financially. And really, I could probably stop taking a paycheck from my church if I needed to during this COVID-19 thing. That there's a freedom in that, right? So I think it's a great thing that can find balance if you're intentional and you're thoughtful about it.
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I think entrepreneurship is small business, one of the greatest things you can do to be able to give back to society. And, whenever you add value into our society, value gets added back. And so you use those dollars. And then, as Mike said so well, you guys are so influential of taking it to the storehouse first and being able to give and contribute. I think contribution is one of our human needs. When we can get outside of our own selves and give beyond ourselves. Entrepreneurship gives you a platform to do that, which is really exciting.
That's good stuff. So kind of speaking of, tools and resources and using this platform that you guys have, tell us about, the inside of what STR is about and the actual tools inside of it and how it can really help, our listeners and people that are needing this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Salute to Relationships is an online training platform that you can take. It's portable, it's powerful, it's practical, it's engaging, and you can use it wherever you're at, whether you're deployed, anywhere in the world. And so whether you're single, you're dating, you're engaged, or you're married, it's a great tool for all of us because we're all in relationships of some kind. It's specifically designed for romantic relationships. And so romantic relationships will get the most out of it. But again, single people who are wanting to be in a dating relationship, they're going to get a ton out of it because you're going to get to understand yourself at a whole nother level. And so many relationship problems are really just single people problems that we drag from our past into our present, and it can affect our future. So it's really nice, even if you're single, because you can say, wow, I'm learning so much. And it's great because it's transferable to all relationships. It works at work. And so as well as with your friends and at home. And so there are 8 major modules, if you will, with over 50 videos, audio, built-in assessments, next step questions. It's super interactive. And we've created it where either individuals can go through it or entire military groups can purchase it for their entire group. And that's really what we focused on, and is to be able to have that. So the online training modules include communication. Communication is the lifeblood of relationship. And so miscommunication, unmet expectations, those are just 2 of some of the biggest breakdowns that people go through as the years progress. And so trading places, that's another topic. Learning the art of being able to see life through each other's eyes, step into each other's shoes, huge topic. I mean, so many people, you guys have maybe seen this with your own lives. It's like we can say the same phrase, but mean totally different things, right? Like, it's like you walk into a walk-in closet and a woman says, I got nothing to wear. Most guys are like, are you kidding me? You got a huge closet full of clothes. What she means is like, I got nothing new to wear, nothing I want to wear. And 80% of guys, when they walk into a closet, they say, I have nothing to wear. They mean literally, I got no clean underwear, right? And so same phrase, different meaning. And so that's a huge, huge topic. And so on a massive scale, so that module really unpacks that, helps people understand and articulate and use language to what are my needs and how do I receive love? And what does that look like for me personally? And so then we talk through sex and money and spirituality and roles and expectations, family and friends, kids, in-laws. We talked about suicide prevention. We talked about deployment and mid-tour leave and reintegrating tips. And then, one of the biggest topics, like we already said, is that topic of self-care. And so being able to have self-awareness of understanding what's going on in me, which actually has a huge impact on we. And so couples can do that, or an individual can do that, but also for the military side, we have, on top of that, we have certification exams for their military warriors to go through. We also have a private portal, which is really cool for really leaders to be able to add their own content to be able to influence their own group as an extended resource and branch to their own group. So it's a really cool resource, I think, that people can use regardless of what branch you're at in the military. Mike,
what's really fascinating, I think, I was telling Matt the other day is, man, if we were to take a time machine and go back and try to build a tool that would be hyper relevant for COVID-19, coronavirus, sheltering in place, it would be Salute to Relationships. And we built this not knowing that we'd be in this scenario, but the same principles of being on two different continents for deployment and being engaged even stateside and being separated for trainings, that applies with the shelter in place piece. So you can do this from anywhere. And then that private portal piece is really exciting for this time too, because that's what we see leaders scrambling to get done. How do I contextualize a message to my people without literally just putting Department of Defense information on a YouTube channel somewhere? Well, it's password protected, it's cyber secure, individual username, and now a unit chaplain, mental health worker, commander, NCOIC can speak directly. And actually, we just signed a contract with the Wounded Warrior Project, so they're using this as well with their Project Odyssey suicide prevention. We're doing a pilot program with them. So it's really even extending beyond just the active duty military.
That's awesome. We love that. And I'm really curious, do you guys have anything, I've been putting us on mute because I've been listening to my 3-year-old in the background as I'm filming from my daughter's room, get put in timeout. Do you have anything for like small children? Is there like a cartoon version to help them work through some of these issues? Because I think it's getting to them too.
Yeah, we actually are in conversations with something called the Phase Project right now about implementing their material into ours. And if you haven't heard of Phase Project, I highly recommend it. It's comes out of a company called Rethink and Orange, and they partnered together with Fuller Seminary to do a psychological study of every year of a child's life and make basically an instruction manual for every year up through college, from birth to college, to really understand where they're at developmentally. So it's not a cartoon for the kids, but it is a parent aid. So
that's awesome. Well, really, the cartoon probably would benefit our Marine and Army listeners as well. So I think it'd be a dual purpose. Hey, another question for you guys, because I think a lot of times we learn through adversity. We learn through our failures more than we learn through our successes. And in that theme, I know for Stu and I, some of our projects that have gone kind of sideways, we have gained so much more knowledge and insight. And I'm sure that's no different for you guys. If you don't mind, can you just highlight some of the times that the plans fell apart or things didn't go exactly as you anticipated? Because I know some of our listeners are like, man, it's awesome leading churches and healing marriages and love Jesus and potentially growing this business, but I'm pretty sure it's not all rainbows and unicorns for you guys. So can you highlight some of those for us?
Yeah, dude, that is so true. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to be comfortable with the word no, and you have to be get comfortable with failure. And I love what you said. There's opportunity to get intelligently and learn. Some of your greatest success can come through when things don't go well. In fact, not too long ago, we were in an organization and getting ready to sign on. We hadn't signed it yet, and so they wanted us to reach out to their leaders and do a training for them, and so that they could go and train people. And so Mike and I were really excited about it. We got on the Zoom call. There's probably 12 of us, and right away we have opposition from one of the people that was looking at the list, and it was basically we were talking about the differences between men and women and fitting places. But that was too gender specific for one of our people. And so she was pushing back and saying, what about the non-binary couples? And, what about this? And what about this? And we value every person. But our actual training wasn't set up specifically to talk to every possible group out there. And so we were like, oh my gosh, what do we do in this situation? And well, we knew like this was not fitting perfectly with their organization, and so we did not meet the needs that they thought they had in that moment. And so we said, hey, we hear you. This doesn't work for you. We're going to fix it. And so we're going to take the time to rewrite some of our content to be able to make it more palatable for the specific group members that they might have. And so we did that in 3 days, I think, Mike, and turned it around, and spent a lot of money having to turn that around, and so yeah, it was. We knew that our resources, we might get pushback on that at some point down the road with them, but we got it right away, and so we had to move fast, and navigate how to do that well. So that was definitely oh crap moment for us, but we got through it.
Yeah, and that example, you were breaking up a little bit on the connection when you teed that up, but I think that required a lot of prayer too, to really discern, okay, where are we going to compromise in how we say things, because the fact is, if you treat gender as completely fluid and non-existing, relationship counseling really has nowhere to go. And and coming back from our worldview and making sure that we're not just shifting to accommodate a sale, but we're also validating every person and being true to what we believe is really helpful about our material. So that's adversity. I think your question about feeling like you've actually failed, though. I love that book by Maxwell, Failing Forward. And I think that's just so helpful in how you teed that up, David. And one of the neat things about STR is it was born out of a place that felt like failure. And that was me talking to a psychologist about some of the things I saw in the military. I had a back injury in Iraq, and my wife, like probably most people's spouses, claimed that I might have some hearing loss. And so I went to get my ears checked and, have a little bit of the ringing in my ears and have that back injury. And of course, when I'm there at the VA, they want to talk about kind of my combat record and things I've seen in Iraq. And so we're having this discussion, and before long, all of a sudden, I've got this new label, disabled veteran, service-connected disability with a rating. And that was just really difficult for my sense of self. And it brought me to a place where I realized that's okay as a label for other people that I help, but not for me. And I just wasn't really doing well with that label of being a service-connected veteran. And at the same time, I decided to go for 12 sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy at the VA. I found that helpful. But sometimes it's really hard when you're a caregiver and you're used to being in the other chair and you're speaking into people's lives and helping them with trauma. That was just really brutally tough for me to kind of humble myself and just walk through some of those things. But it's helpful because I realized I had quarantined a lot of memories and a lot of stuff that was just hard. And there's even a particular term for that caregiver trauma, when you're always caring for other people and you see them die and go through difficult things. You carry that in a little different way as opposed to your typical warrior trauma. But it was out of those experiences that Matt and I started to talk more. And when you are connected with a disability that was incurred in Iraq or in service, you do get a modest check, depending on your rating, every month from the government. And going back to your question of how do you be faithful as a follower of Christ and be a steward and not be money motivated, my wife and I really wanted to invest that in something that would help other service members and active veterans. And really, we used that seed money to start STR, and Matt used his own income to start that. And we went in 50-50 on that. And really, you could probably say that had I not been brought to a place where I needed to talk to somebody, STR really wouldn't be around. So
yeah, that's crazy. And we always say that, and it's not original to us at all, but God works in mysterious ways, and where doors close, where doors open, and we're so short-sighted as humans to even understand that the opportunities that could arise out of that. So even like in the midst of COVID, right? I'm hearing, the different folks I'm listening to. I listened to a guy, Lee Dominique, the other day. He's from I think the founder of Kingdom Builders, and just an amazing entrepreneur and pastor, but talking about these virtual churches that are standing up are reaching tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of more people that he could ever reach in a church service, right? He may have a 5,000 capacity. Pastor Kai out in Hawaii said he had 500,000 touches to some kind of content that they have. He's like, you can't do that. There's opportunity for everything, whether it's ministry, business. So I love that you highlight that. I love the fact that take a negative and turn it to a positive. And I think that's one huge aspect of our faith, that, you take these things that happen and you're like, Lord, it's yours. What's the plan? And he blesses those things. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That was a challenging deployment, and I don't talk about it a lot. And I know Mike had some pretty major challenges, probably more than I did. It hits home really, really close to David and I. We've had some classmates from our college commit suicide, and as David said earlier, he had some. We have people in our command that have committed suicide and have made attempts, and there's a lot of it going on right now. And I think this stuff that you guys are doing is incredibly powerful. And besides the SDR program itself, what are some other useful resources, books, podcasts, programs that you guys have seen that have been kind of helpful in this field?
Sure. Well, my all-time favorite book when it comes to relationships is actually How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an old book by Dale Carnegie, wrote it in the early 1900s. And when I actually didn't read the book for many years because it just sounded kind of fishy, it's kind of like how to manipulate people. Is that what this is about? And it's actually not that at all. You get to see his heart come out so well, and really about how to optimize relationships across the board. And so that has been one of my favorites. From an entrepreneur standpoint, probably my favorite podcast right now is a podcast by Guy Raz. It's called How I Built This. And it's really the story of entrepreneurs and how they started their companies, how they struggled well, the pitfalls and failures they go through. And it's so encouraging as an entrepreneur because, David, to your point, there's hard moments. People only see the successes or what you do, or this is how many people you've reached. Great. Do you know how many people I didn't reach? Do you know how many people we did fail? You know how many people we struggled through or said you're stupid or whatever, And so it's so good because you're with a community that says me too. And so that podcast has been very meaningful for me.
Yeah. One that comes to my mind, I've been on a lot, is the Carey Nieuwhof podcast. He interviews pretty elite church leaders, business leaders. And then actually 3 weeks ago, he launched a podcast with David Kitteman, the president of Barna, called the Weekly Pulse. And that is for church leaders. And it's really data driven on how churches are doing in coronavirus, COVID-19 territory. And so I found those extremely helpful. Yeah.
That's great.
The Matt Morgan coaching podcast I listened to as well.
Oh yeah, there's that one too.
actually, I really like your podcast, Matt, because I've got a touch of ADD, and I really appreciate the pithiness of it. And I just listened to an episode of Matt's that was talking about parenting by generations, and it was just perfect length and full of content. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing some of those resources. That's we love to. I think for me, I struggle because I'm always trying to see every podcast and read every book and do full-time Navy and then do some Storehouse and do a podcast. And I need to really hone it in, because I think that, the shotgun blast is not as effective as the laser focus. So I really appreciate you guys offering those resources up.
David likes to, he sees a lot of squirrels. Like there's a lot of squirrels that run around and he's like, oh, squirrel, I gotta do this. Oh, squirrel, I gotta do this. And
that is not a lie. I do resemble that comment. So that that it is an issue. Maybe a touch of ADD as well. Follow-on question: are you guys, if you had the opportunity to go back to your younger self, outside of potentially offering advice for some hair care products or something like that, what would be your top advice to your younger self?
That's a great question. This is going to sound trite as a pastor, but I would just say, trust God. Just trust that. You alluded to this earlier, David, or maybe it was Stu, but God has the ability to see the whole picture. We don't. And if we really believe what Scripture says, that He's prepared good works for us to step into in advance of our own birth, the implication would be we would be a lot less stressed out. I'm getting ready to preach tomorrow for Easter. We're doing a drive-in church setup where multiple services and cars are driving in. Pray for me, by the way. It's going to be 39 degrees and snowing, and I'll be standing on a roof preaching. But one of the points of making the message is that the resurrected Christ could walk through walls, apparently, just pass through material objects. He's in the upper room with his disciples. They're huddled in there, afraid, full of doubt. And I'm just making the point that if we really believe the Easter message as a reality, not just a nice story, we should be walking through walls as well, not literal walls, but we should be able to pass through some of these barriers of fear and doubt in our lives. And I think I'd probably tell my younger self, don't erect walls of fear and doubt that don't need to be there. And when you do run into them, just trust Jesus to help you pass through those.
Yeah, mine is around fear as well. Hands down. In my coaching, I talk a lot about this personality assessment called the Enneagram. And Ennea stands for the Greek word for the number 9, and gram is a figure. It's a 9-sided figure. You get a number between 1 and 9. What I love about it is that it helps us understand our core motivation, which is way more interesting than behavior. Like, why did I do that? And so as I've learned so much about that and put language to it, I see so much of myself and my younger self trying so hard to be all things so that people would see me as successful. And because of that, that actually has stunted my growth, because I would try to hide some limitations that I had. And those limitations were never been able to grow because I was scared that people would see them as, now I failed, therefore I'm a failure. I moved it from, I failed at something to it becomes who I am. And I was so scared of that, it really limited me. So I would tell myself, allow yourself to be fully seen. It's the most vulnerable thing in the world, to show up with your whole heart, but know that you're enough. It's okay. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are, because of what God says you are. And I think I would have been able to grow a lot faster, further in my younger years, for sure.
That's awesome. That's pretty powerful. It gets me motivated. Well, awesome, guys. Well, this has been a great conversation, and I'm so thankful that you guys were able to kind of last minute jump on this thing with us and discuss what you guys are doing, because it's really important, and we want to get this message out to people, because right now it's just such a good time to start really building on the relationships. Get back in touch with people that you haven't contacted in a long time. And I've started to try to reach out to some friends from high school and from college that I haven't talked to in a long time, and reconnect and do Zoom calls. Like we set up family Zoom calls, and just building on relationships, investing in people, investing in relationships is so big right now. How can people?
I can't even get a call back from you, Stu.
Well, yeah.
Dude, I don't remember the last time you called my phone.
I just expect for you to call me every day. So.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You don't have to call me out on video, man. Well, so how can people get in touch with you? What we would love for this to see out of this is, our listeners and our network of people reaching out to you guys and asking about STR and asking how they can get their people involved, asking how they can get their sailors, their soldiers connected with STR, and so they can start building their relationships and getting in front of this whole like PTSD issue. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, probably the easiest is go to our website. It's called salutetorelationships.com. And there's also a contact us page that they can go and reach out to us. And so everything they need or to be able to reach out to us, they can get right there. It's probably the simplest way.
Yeah. We also have a Facebook page, of course, and we're on other venues and social, but I think that would probably be the starting point, the front door for most people. And I would just say if there's any listeners or viewers who are in charge of a group of military warriors, whether that's a group of veterans or active duty members, I can't think of a more strategic thing to implement right now than something that is battle tested as a digital cybersecure resource that is chock full of really great relationship content that also allows you to speak privately and contextually to all your people on issues as important as suicide prevention and bringing that divorce rate down. So, this is definitely something that we were on a call yesterday with a federal government contractor about the potential of putting a proposal in for a special COVID-19 national response relief opportunity. So the fact is there is some federal funding here to buy into this tech and this platform. It really just takes the initiative of a leader who sees the value of investing in relationships.
Stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
that's incredible, guys. Oh, sorry, Stu.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's incredible, fellas. I really appreciate, and Stu, really appreciate the fact that you, everything you guys are doing and just highlighting those resources for folks out there. It's awesome. You guys are incredible. Motivate me. I know you motivate Stu, and from the business aspect and from the spiritual aspect and the relationship aspect. And I'll be expecting, phone calls from each of you to reach out and fill my cup a little bit. So I don't know, we'll make that covenant.
That sounds great.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks again, guys, for coming on. This will come out probably after Easter, but hope everyone has an amazing Easter. Thanks for listening, and go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day.
See ya.